Well, that takes us nicely on to speak to Florence Villeneuve, who's back with the review of the international papers. And, surprise, surprise, Greece is everywhere.
Greece, specifically the events over the next couple of days. Going to be a very crucial weekend if you take a look at a couple of the front pages. They're talking about that. The Wall Street Journal talks about the Greek drama, how it is extending over into the weekend. Of course, this comes after German Chancellor Angela Merkel ordered that an agreement must be in place before markets open on Monday. So The Guardian as well is talking about the weekend deadline to avoid default. But I like this photo here. You can see Angela Merkel and the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi all looking very chummy yesterday.
Yeah, looking chummy at least.
Chummy.
However, the German press seems to have a different story. They say people are really starting to lose their patience.
Yes, absolutely. I pulled out an article from Die Welt, which says the Greek rescue has become a farce. Grexit or not, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that Europe's image is terrible these days. It's not a place with creative or scientific potential or a place people want to invest, according to Die Welt. This is a quote. While Brussels is grappling with stubborn subsidy apostles and rancid socialism, progress is continuing around the rest of the world. When are we going to come back to the future? Die Welt says enough is enough. As for the future of Greece, though, must be said Greek papers are pretty pessimistic today. I pulled out an editorial from Ekatemerini here. You can see it says that there's no happy end to this story. First of all, because this story doesn't have an end. But secondly, it's because we can only be happy when we Greeks realize that only we can fix our country and only if we're united. So you can see here, only the Greeks can write a happy end. And Ekatemerini says that end isn't coming anytime soon.
Okay, and one to watch, and we will undoubtedly be watching it closely over the next few days. Well, let's move stateside now, and the Supreme Court has handed President Barack Obama a major victory by upholding a key portion of his healthcare law.
That's right, and as you can imagine, left-wing papers are pretty happy about this. The editorial of the New York Times today says that the Supreme Court saves Obamacare again, because it's the second time in 3 years that the majority of the Supreme Court has rejected what the New York Times calls a blatantly political effort to destroy the Affordable Care Act, so Obamacare, essentially. What's interesting is a lot of papers are calling this a big win for Obama in his bruising battle for his legacy. And what's interesting is he owes a lot to someone quite surprising, and that's Chief Justice John Roberts, who is a conservative. You can read more about it here in the Washington Post. It points out that Obama and Roberts occupy nearly opposite ends of the ideological spectrum. And also what's interesting is Obama, when he was senator, actually voted against Roberts' confirmation to the court, saying that the judge lacked sufficient empathy for the powerless and could not be counted on to vote the right way in the most important cases. But he obviously voted the right way for Obama this time. The Washington Post points out that not only did Roberts vote along with the majority of the court, he also wrote the court's opinion in this case, and thus ensuring that the legacies of both Obama's presidency and the Roberts Court are forever intertwined.
I have to say there's something quite satisfying about that. But I imagine Chief Justice Roberts has also drawn a lot of criticism.
That's right, specifically from Republicans. Once again, you can read more about it in the Washington Post today. A very interesting article on the Republican position here. It talks about how Republicans are noisily outraged, and yet they're quietly relieved by the court's decision. Why is this going on? There's this chorus of outrage, but party leaders are actually quietly, privately relieved. Why? Because Republicans are actually spared the challenge of having to come up with a solution for the 6.4 million Americans, most of them from conservative states, who might have found their health insurance unaffordable if the court had gone the other way. Also interesting fact, coming into the presidential election season, of course, and this is very good for Republican presidential candidates, according to this article in the Washington Post, because essentially they can continue to galvanize their conservative base by both criticizing the law and criticizing the court, so it's a win-win situation for them.
Happy for them, Florence. Well, let's move on now to South Africa. Papers there are focusing on a long-awaited report on the deaths of 34 striking mine workers back in 2012.
That's right. First of all, there's a good article in the British paper, The Guardian, that kind of sums up just what that judicial commission said. You can see they're recommending a criminal investigation into the police. So the police are condemned by this commission. Yesterday, President Jacob Zuma said the Marikana incident was a horrendous tragedy. But if you take a look at the South African press, it reminds readers that Zuma and his government have been criticized for their approach, often called a callous approach, to the families of those that were killed by the police in that incident. I pulled out this article from the Mail and Guardian, so a South African paper. It points out that over the past 3 years, family members have actually been complaining to the Mail and Guardian that they've been treated as criminals or families of criminals. So you can see here, this article is quite critical of Zuma's speech yesterday, saying that it actually provides no assistance or support for the widows of those who died in Marikana. It says the report really doesn't go far enough, specifically when it comes to compensating the victims' families.
No, I believe the report said the politicians were of absolutely no way responsible or involved, and it focused more on the police. Okay, an interesting one. Well, there, France Villeneuve, thanks indeed for that review of the international papers.